let's take a look at how to deploy an Astro app to AWS Amplify. Now, the first thing we need to do, of course, is to create an Astro app. So let's go ahead and do that. Run npm create Astro. Once you've done that, give the app a name. So let's call it Astro app. And then let's use the blog template and also install the dependencies. Now, this installation might take a few seconds. If it does, just relax and wait for it to finish. In this case, it was pretty instant. So let's just go ahead and select the default answers for the rest of the prompts. So yes to TypeScript, yes to strict, and yes to initializing a Git repository. And once this is done, we can cd into the app and open it in a code editor to see what exactly is going on. Now, as you can see, we have a source folder, and inside that folder, let me just close all of this pop out. Now, inside that folder, we have the pages folder, and this is where all of our pages for this website live in. So we have the index file, which is just the home page. We have the about file, and then we have the blog page, which is inside the blog/astro file. And this file basically goes through a list of the blog items and renders them. And to open each of those blog items and read them, we'll have to use the slug.astro file. And all of the blog content are basically coming from the content/blog folder. Now that we're aware of all of this, let's actually go ahead and run this app and see what happens. Open it in the browser, and you can see we have the home page like we saw. We have the about page as well, and we have the blog page, which shows a list of the blog items. But then if you click on each of these items, you can then go ahead and read the individual blog item. If we close this, and before we deploy, if we run npm run build and take a look at the dist folder, you can see that all of the build files are dropped inside this folder. Now, the reason why I've shown you this is that this information is important when we start configuring Amplify to deploy this app. And that said, we can go ahead and actually start deploying the app. So let's first of all push this project to GitHub. So let's create a Git repository on GitHub. Now, the reason I'm doing this is because I want to set up a continuous delivery between AWS Amplify and GitHub. So what basically happens is if I make any commit, I want Amplify to pick up that commit and redeploy it. So that said, we can add the URL as a remote to this project and then push it to GitHub. Cool. So we can then go ahead and start deploying the app using AWS Amplify. So if you head to the AWS console and search for AWS Amplify, when you find it, open it. And once you do, click the new app drop down, choose host web app, and select the Git provider. In this case, it's GitHub. Of course, feel free to choose whichever Git provider you're using. Then click continue. Now on the next page, you need to select a repository. But before you do that, please keep in mind, if this is your first time deploying to AWS Amplify, you have to give Amplify the authority to have access to your GitHub account. I've already done that, so I'm not seeing the menu or the pop-up to do that. But if this is your first time, please go ahead and follow the instructions to authorize Amplify to have access to your GitHub account. And once you've done that, you can select a repository, leave the branch as main, and click next. All right, so we need to configure the build settings. Remember when we ran the run build command to see what exactly was going on? Amplify knows it needs to run this command, but what it doesn't know is what the output directory is, and that was why I showed you that dist folder. So change the base directory from being the root folder to the dist folder, and then click save. Then click next and click save and deploy to deploy the app. Now this is going to take a minute or two, so relax and wait for Amplify to finish. And once it's done, I'm going to jump back and then we'll take a look at what we've deployed. All right, as you can see, the deployment was successful, and Amplify has given us a remote URL to test the app. And if you open it, you can see that we have the home page, and which is in fact living in a remote URL. And all of our routes are working as expected. So the about page is fine. The blog page is fine as well. But what's more interesting is that if you click on each of these dynamic routes, they actually show you the block content, and this is working because they are statically generated. So each of these block items actually have their own HTML file. And that's it. This is basically how you deploy an Astro app to AWS Amplify. Thank you so much for sticking to the end of the video. See you in the next one. Bye.